through. This has been a really big project. It's been about 4 years. It's been an excellent project. So I just wanted to go through what we've learnt. And thanks to Paul and Beck, who these presentations give you a snapshot of some of the research that has been done in this project. And that sort of research has been going on nationally on all sorts of different topics. That was just two. So to start with, I'll just do an overview of the project. So it was a really, really big project. There was about $10 million of cash in this project, and that was a 50-50 co-investment with the Veggie Levies and the Government Department of Ags. And then there's, extra money in kind, as there always is. It was a 4-year project, and we've just finished pretty much. The final report goes in at the end of next month. And we've linked up with New South Wales DPI. They had a project as well, a similar project, similarly funded. So it's a big project. It's a big project team. So this is just an overview of the people that have been involved in this project. We were the lead agency, and we had a fairly big team compared to some of the other groups. This was a dynamic team. Not everybody was in there for the whole time. People came and went. It was an amazing experience to work with all of these incredibly talented researchers from around Australia, and it's really great for the Australian vegetable industry to have such a resource for them to use. We also had a number of private research providers, and I found these guys exceptionally good to work with. They brought an extra perspective to the work and did some really good field trials for us. So we had Ant Rice up at the Granite Belt doing some monitoring for us. Len Tesoriero, many of you would already know, was all round helping on lots of parts of the project. John Fletcher was based down in Victoria. Chris Tempson up in Bundaberg and Chris Monsoor up in Bowen did a lot of our field trial work for us. And Stuart Grigg down in Victoria did some monitoring for us in lettuce and thrips. And we thank them very much for their efforts on the project. They were so good to work with. The project also had 4 PhD students. Bianca, Noel and Joe have all gone through La Trobe down in Melbourne, and we have Umar down in Tassie. So I really wanted to acknowledge industry. This project definitely was not possible without, collaboration with industry direct. This is growers and agronomists. This list is just the Queensland businesses and people that we had significant involvement with within the project. So these are people that allowed us to put monitoring sites over time on their properties and collect data and had ongoing advice in various aspects of the project. And this is just Queensland, and I know WA and Victoria would have similar lists for their states. And then on top of that would be the hundreds of growers that we've visited, to do disease surveys in all of the districts. So we thank them all. We can't do the work that we do without access to commercial crops. I also like to thank Ausveg. Ausveg have been a big supporter of this project, and these guys down Callum, Maddie, Zali and Danielle in particular have been great. We've done lots of workshops with them and they've been super, super easy to work with, and it's been a great experience. So big project, big scope. So basically the project covered virus and bacterial and phytoplasma diseases in vegetable crops in Australia, essentially, and that includes all of the insect vectors that spread the viruses and the phytoplasmas. We also did a bit of biosecurity planning. So we developed 6 contingency plans. So that's a contingency plan for 3 viruses and 3 bacteria that we currently don't have in Australia. So that was just doing gap analysis to work out what we would need to do if they arrived in Australia to minimise their impacts. We also did a lot of development in diagnostics and developed lots of low tech and fast diagnostics. And Beck touched a little bit on one of the efforts that particularly New South Wales and WA have done with bacterial identifications. So what this means for you is we can hopefully get turnaround times down for samples that come through our diagnostic services. With the project had lots of monitoring. Paul's talk gave you a really good insight into the level of detail that needs to happen to make informed management recommendations. And I liked his term hyperlocal. It's a great term, particularly with viruses and insects. It's almost site specific, and it's really hard to write generic recommendations for management because it is so complicated and complex. And so a lot of the work that we've done has come together for developing management guides, but it's been a lot of disease surveys, monitoring, pot trials, field trials, and then discussions with industry to understand what happens commercially. We also did a review of seed as an entry pathway for endemic and exotic viruses, and we've held 2 workshops on this. The last one was this month, and that's been really useful in clarifying risk of seed and Beck touched on that with the Pectobacterium and the potential for that to be seed-borne. So these workshops have been great, and we will see a project coming out of Hort Innovation in the next couple of months on improving diagnostics to reduce risk. The project has been great in rebuilding pathology resource for the vegetable industry, particularly for viruses and bacteria. We had a bit of a hiatus for a few years, but it's good to get such a big national group back together again and reconnecting with industry and understanding what's happening now. We've also put through the 4 PhD students, and the project also delivered free diagnostics for the industry. So what's the outcomes for you? So we've developed these 2 disease guides, one for bacteria and one for viruses. The bacterial disease one is available now. We were handing some out at Hort Connections, and the virus one will be ready at the end of next month. So if you would like to, if you haven't got a hard copy of the Bacto one and you'd like one, or if you want one of both, please register your interest in getting a hard copy today. You can put that in, put your name in the question box, and I think Heidi's going to send out a survey post-webinar, and you could also register through there, or you can just contact me direct. So these disease guides are basically the recommendations we've come up with for the major virus or bacterial diseases that the vegetable industry faces. We've tried to capture where and what crops. So in the back of the guides, there'll be district commodity tables, which tells you what the likely bacterial or virus diseases will be for your area. And it is a culmination of all of that work that we've done with the monitoring, the disease surveys, trials, plus all the information that we find through other researchers around the world. We've also developed up a priority list of endemic and exotic pathogens for veggies, and that's available on Hort Innovation. That will hopefully inform future R&D spend. And yeah, on your levy money for endemics, and also where your biosecurity spend might need to go for exotics. We delivered some disease identification workshops, which were going great in Queensland. And we had plans to roll them nationally, but COVID happened, so that put the end to that. We did manage to do one in Mildura this year, so that was good. We did actually get out of Queensland. So the notes from those workshops are going to be loaded on Hort Innovation and available to everybody. And Hort Innovation, hopefully, we're really interested in looking at a specialised extension project based on those workshops. So hopefully that'll happen. They were really well received. People were really happy with them. And I would personally like to see those go ahead for all of the industries, really. We also developed lots of fact sheets. There's currently 9 available. So these have more detail in them for specific topics than what the guides do. So you can use the guide, and then if you need more information, you can go and find fact sheets. We have a few more to complete, and we'll also make these available to other groups like Soil Wealth that put up fact sheets, so that you can find it where you normally find information if that's not on Hort Innovation. So these are the fact sheets that are currently available. And we have about another month left, so we can write some more if you've got any suggested topics that aren't there. And again, you can put these in the question box, or Heidi might be able to capture them in a post-webinar survey. So just going through a few of the other areas of what we've delivered. This was the biosecurity preparedness. So the contingency plans were to these 3 broad virus groups and to 3 bacteria pathogens. 23 diagnostic assays were circulated around our national diagnostic groups. this was so that, you know, we could get validation for the different assays in different labs. So we made sure that they were working. We have 16 new ones for viruses and 7 for bacteria. Whole range of technologies we use because you need different tests for different things. And as Beck alluded to before in her talk, there was lots of work done on developing up these databases for bacterial identification. We had the 4 PhD students. Bianca was working on phytoplasmas, so that's tomato big bud disease. Joe Mackey was looking at new technologies for virus diagnostics in things like pollen and weeds. Umar down in Tassie was looking at paleroviruses in legume crops because that's a big issue down in Tasmania. And Noel was based with us up here in Brisbane, and he was looking at zucchinis and a new Pseudomonas disease that turned up in Bundaberg a few years ago. So these guys are all going to be finished in the next couple of months. So if anyone has a job, I'm sure they'd be very interested. So what next? So it's been a great project. It's been so good to rebuild the resource for the industry. It was a big project. We got a lot done, but there's still more to do, as there always will be with crop protection. And at the moment, these 3 areas are what we feel should be looked at next, if others agree. Virus diseases affecting lettuce and brassica definitely emerged in the project, particularly for the Lockyer Valley and Victoria. Other areas are also impacted, like Sydney Basin and south of Perth. So these are aphid and thrips transmitted viruses in lettuce and brassica. What we learned through the project with the viruses similar viruses that affect cucurbits and capsicums could be transferred fairly easily to these different crops and different viruses with a bit of work. New age bactericides, I think, is something we really need to start looking at. Protectants aren't very effective under high pressure, and that's no news to anybody. What I think would be useful would be to look at products that actually reduce bacteria numbers in a plant after it's infected. So then when you get the follow-up rain, there's less bacteria to come out for those follow-on infections. We identified a number of products in the current project that would probably work to do this, but we need to test it out. And the last one is, as Beck was talking about, the Pectobacterium disease management in zucchinis and brassicas. It's definitely an emerging problem we've seen through the last 4 years. And we, as she was mentioning, we need that extra information before we can develop the management strategies for it. So if you like these ideas and you think that we should invest in research into these ideas, what can you do? So you can talk to Hort Innovation and you can talk to your local vegetable SIAP member. I think the next SIAP meeting is September this year. Currently, none of these projects are up in front of SIAP as a concept. So if you would like to see it go ahead, we need to get it moving and get them into the SIAP. And I think Heidi's got a poll at the end of the webinar where you can actually vote on whether you think that's a good idea or not. And I encourage you to vote. And thanks. Thanks, Heidi.